Maligayang Pasko at manigong bagong taon. Ako po si Dan Lovinaria, taga Minneapolis, Minnesota. I am one of the planners of this year's Pamaskong Handog 2022. We have an exciting evening planned for all of you on December 17th, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And don't forget to click on the link below to register for Pamaskong Handog 2022. We will see you there on December 17th. Maraming salamat po.
Meet Ray. Ray lives on a farm. He loves playing kickball with his grandkids, but lately he's gotten a little slower and been visiting the doctor a lot more often. This is Kim. Kim lives in the city. She loves to exercise, cook healthy meals, and can't remember the last time she called in sick. They're both people, but not all people are the same. And yet, when we visit the doctor, our treatments don't look that different. Why is that? Because we just don't have enough information to do it better until now. Enter all of us. The research program based on precision medicine. Precision medicine is a revolutionary new approach to treating and preventing disease that's personalized instead of one size fits all. By gathering health data from 1 million people like Ray and Kim and Trevor and Samir, our country's best researchers will be able to develop treatments that are as unique and complex as we are. With this new information, doctors will have a better understanding of disease so they can innovate the next great breakthroughs in medicine. Once enough people join, suddenly everything changes. Information becomes clear, patterns emerge, and simple data transforms into life-saving knowledge. This means that Ray and Kim's children and their children's children can live longer, healthier lives. By becoming one of the first 1 million people to volunteer, you can help reshape the entire future of healthcare for generations to come. If we can figure out how to fly, put a man on the moon, and connect the entire world, surely we should be able to improve the future of healthcare. Not just for Ray and Kim or even you, but for all of us. Sign up at joinallofus.org. The future of health begins with you.
Good evening to all our participants, fellow nurses, and guests, nationally and globally. Magandang umaga, Philippines. I am Lolita B. Campos, advisor to the Human Rights Committee and past PNAA president. On behalf of our current president, Dr. Gloria Briones and the executive board, welcome to our International Nurses Recruitment Webinar Series number 2, an educational presentation by the Human Rights Committee in collaboration with the Global Affairs Committee. This is the member of the planning committee of this webinar. We completed the first series on November 17 with great success, and we thank you for sharing your positive feedback for those who attended. We hope that you are able to access the copy of the frequently asked questions and their answers in your email. Tonight's presentation will describe the experiences of Filipino nurses with their migration and recruitment to the United States, as well as cases presented by the Human Rights Committee. Lessons learned will be identified from a personal and professional perspective, and an explanation of the immigration application process for nurses recruited to the United States will be discussed. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Dr. Mary Joy Garcia Dilla, the immediate past PNAA president.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lolita Campos. I'm so excited to see that our numbers are going up to over 100 so far. So let me just go over some ground rules. This is a webinar series, and this section will be recorded. At the same time, we would encourage you to please use the Q&A box, which is located on the lower side of your screen. And there is an icon that says Q&A if you have any questions. I will be introducing our 4 speakers. And after the last speaker, that's when we will be opening the question and answer, which will be moderated by Miss Madeline Yu and Miss Emily Danuco. Between myself and Dr. Dan Lovinario, we will be also moderating the chat. And thank you to Miss Carol Robles. And together with Dan, hopefully we will not encounter any technical issues during this webinar series. So now let me begin in introducing our nurses that will be sharing their courageous stories. First, Miss Kay Mendoza, RN, BSN, CNOR, specializes in trauma and neuro operations. She is an active UST alumni. She is a traveling nurse for 16 years and have worked with over 30 agencies, finished 40 plus contracts, and have worked at top-rated hospitals here in the United States. Her passion to mentor travel nurses led her to volunteer her time and share her knowledge to the travel nursing community across the United States. After going through a lot of experience dealing with agencies, contracts, and work environment, she is here to share her journey, trials, and how to overcome it. Fondly known as the traveling nurse hacker, Kay hosts Bed Talk RN, a free webinar on educating nurses on how to work smart and not hard. She is one of the administrators of the biggest social media Facebook group called the Fora Filipino Nurses to US, with over 170,000 members. She hopes to help a lot of Filipino nurses on how to make the best informed decisions through education via social media engagement. The second nurse who will share her narrative is Miss Jessica Gallega Camelo, BSN RN, who completed her BS Biological Science from West Visayas State University in Iloilo City in 2001. She pursued her Bachelor of Science in Nursing at STI West Negros in 2005. Jessica is currently working as a nephrology travel nurse and is based in Michigan. Our third speaker, Ms. Marife Sevilla, is a retired CNOR. She chairs the PNAA Human Rights Committee and was the past president of PNA Northern California. Last but not the least, attorney Megan Callum is an immigration lawyer and human rights advocate in Naples, Florida. She has worked with the Filipino community in various matters since 2006. Her clients describe Megan as kind, professional, excellent, knowledgeable, and a lifesaver. We are extremely lucky to have all of these speakers who will share their time and expertise tonight. Let us start with Kay Mendoza. Go ahead, Kay.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Kay. Thank you very much, Ms. Joylia, for that introduction. So I will start with my nursing journey. I signed my first contract coming to the United States in 2005. It's been a while, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot has been changed from the process and the rules from then and now. But to give you a background, there's still a lot of similarities of what's going on before and what's happening right now. Okay, next slide. Okay, so as always, the first question is how did you find about this job? It was a very good job event, recruitment event in the Philippines, where a family member and I of mine invited me to join. She's also a PNA member here in the United States, and she was my aunt who used to be having a vacation in the Philippines and happened to know this job. So I said, hey, there's a job in there, let's go. And she said that to me, and I said, okay, I have no idea what I'm going through, but let's do it. So it was very good. Everything went well. Everything went smoothly during the interview. I met the HR director, the nursing director. They were all very pleasant. My aunt who was there was able to actually saw what I was applying to. She said, that's a very good job and think about it. And we went through it. I signed the same day and went home and went to sleep. So it is something that a lot of people probably will do the same thing I did. I have no idea what's in my contract word per word, but all I know was there was an employer and it sounds great. Everything sounds great. And I signed the contract. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the interview went well. The contract stated in there that I can work under New York temporary license, which was actually done before. Long time ago, New York was giving temporary licenses for 6 months, and then after 6 months, you have to take your NCLEX during those time, and then you can keep your job as an RN and your salary as an RN. But if you do not take your NCLEX within that time period, you will be demoted to a CNA, and that was all in the contract. It was very straightforward. I have no doubt that I will be able to finish it. So it really didn't bother me. So I said to them, okay, I got all my papers ready. It's just the NCLEX. I will take it when I get to the United States within 6 months, right? They said the reimbursement is going to be done for CGFNS IELTS visa screen prior to departure. That's about $900 during that time. And I said, that will be great. I will have money for my pocket money when I get there. So I only brought $200 with me going to New York City. And the contract also said free transportation from Philippines to New York City. This is very common to all the contracts right now and the contracts before. Free housing accommodation for 6 months. This is a very good benefit for us. And we asked them, how about after 6 months? And they said, we can stay if you want to, but you will just have to pay for rent, which was very good settings. And this is a very good hospital. They offered retirement pension benefit differential, and it was on a 36-month contract. The only thing was the agency asked us to put a 100,000 peso bond, which for me, that was a big money for me to put out. But thankful for my family who helped us, and they gave us some check that we can use that for a bond. I did not bother asking what's that bond for. But they just mentioned to us that if ever we break our contract while we're there in the Philippines, then we will lose that bond. But it didn't matter to me much because I really have no intention of breaking it, and my intention is to finish what I'm doing and get her to the United States. And then next slide. Okay, what issues I encountered before and after arriving. Now, some issues started to arise before leaving, just before prior departure. I thought I was going to have a pocket money of $900, and they said to me that, hey, we will just give your pocket money when you arrive. So which was like, hey, you know what, that was fine. So we were, I said, that's fine. I don't need to carry that much of a money during my transit. So I'll just get the pocket money when I arrive there. So next slide. So upon arrival, there were a couple of things that were changed already. Number one, I cannot work anymore under New York temporary license for 6 months. And I was instructed to take my NCLEX first before I can start the job. During that time, my family was, I have family relatives here in the United States, which we talked to about it. And we said it was okay since they were there to help me with my housing, because now I cannot start a job. I will not get the housing and I will not get reimbursement. So my family was able to guide me and help me here in the United States, and saying that it's okay. We'll just take the NCLEX and be done with it. And then after that, you just go back to New York after you finish that. So for me, it was easy to take because of the support that I got here in the United States. However, some of my colleagues who were in the same situation did not have relatives upon arrival. So it was really a big mess for them. And for me, it was easier to carry on, and we did not really bother like contacting bigger companies or the resources like the Philippine Embassy or the organizations, or even call my mom in the Philippines because we didn't want her to worry. So we just carried in all ourselves, and we dealt with it, and I just did what I was instructed to. Unfortunately, I still never got the other reimbursement of the 900. So I just tried to live off with a $200 in my pocket. Now, after I passed the NCLEX, I called them right away. Hey, you know what? I passed my NCLEX. I'm ready. I was still not getting a good coordination between the hospital and my agency, and that's where the problems start really getting worse, because now I'm draining my funds in New York City, having $200 down to $5. And I tried to contact some of the relatives who can adopt me in New Jersey, and I was able to stay with them. It was my first time to meet them, and a very, very wonderful family, an extended relative, far relative, and they were able to help me with their housing and gave me a room. And the next slide. So as I mentioned, I did not report or raise the issue. Some people of the group that who came here in the United States too did not raise the issue at all to anybody, because they were scared that their family back home will worry about them. So a lot of things that happened during the change of the contract, nobody raised the issue at all. First, primarily, we don't know who to go here in the United States. And second, we do not want to tell the family back home because we didn't want them to worry. And next slide. So when I was draining my funds and I'm not getting the message from my agency or my employer, I was draining funds. I did not have money to call them anymore. I did not have cell phone that time. There was no internet. There was no Facebook. There was no way for me to communicate or call them except to use the payphone back then in New York, which again, I did not have enough money anymore to be using and calling the number all the time. So in my desperation, I looked for a job, and one of our acquaintance introduced me to a job into a rehab facility, and they said, hey, you know what? It's Friday. You can work on Monday. Come here and you'll work. So I was so happy, like, hey, that's wonderful. I got a job. But as soon as I got there, I was only given a half-day orientation, and I said, is this enough? And they said, don't worry, you're going to be still orienting, and you're going to shadow. On the second day, I was given 40 patients already, and by myself, because they said the charge nurse called out. And I said to them, I cannot do this by myself. And they said, don't worry, we have CNA, somebody will take care of you and help you. And then also the CNAs and the other LPNs asked me to sign documentation that they did, but I did not do it. I did not see. So I told them, I'm sorry, I cannot sign this documentation because I never gave this medication. I never did this to the patient. And then because I stood up for what is the right thing to do, I was even called by supervisor that this is what we do and I should be doing the same thing. So I did not agree on that kind of setup. And on the fourth day, I filed my resignation. And I was thinking and hoping that they will pay me on time during the time of my orientation, but unfortunately, I did not get paid. I called the HR payroll and they said to me, the manager, I talked to the manager and I was told that because you quit, you're not entitled for orientation pay. So then I just took it. It was very sad. And then there was one guardian angel on the way, and while I was walking down the street of New York City, she happened to be one of the employees of one of the hospitals, and she asked me, "Are you okay?" And I just mentioned to her, "No, because I did not get paid by my employer," which I was just expressing this to a random stranger, and where she said, "No, orientation here in New York is paid. So you should be asking for that, and you should be calling for reporting that to the labor, and you can also claim that in a small claims court." During that time, I have no idea what she was saying, and all I did was I started researching about the small claims court and the law for orientation pay, and then I saw that it was right that I should be entitled for pay. And then what I did was I went to small claims court, like what she mentioned, and I filed their a claim. And then eventually after that, they were able to pay me my orientation pay right away. It was just a very, very sad scenario that I have to go through that. And I do not wish that to happen to anybody, but I'm very happy that there were resources in there that I did not see right away. And I'm just thankful for these random people who gave me that information. Because as a new person coming to the United States, I have no idea where to go. And next slide. And then after leaving that facility, finally I was able to get hold of my employer, my original employer. They were able to call me back, and the agency, the recruiter, was able to reach out to me finally after 4 months of no work in the United States, living in Manhattan. $200, non-survivable at all. But I'm very, very happy that there were people who really was very nice to help me out. So when I started my work, everything went well from there on. Whatever they gave me, they promised me the job, the amount of money that I'm going to take, the differential, everything went smooth after that. And one of the best benefits that my employer gave me was a tuition reimbursement, which I was very happy to enroll myself to a master's in nursing education program. Next slide, please. So again, what did I do after this experience? As I said, next slide. I advocated for myself through learning. And I started travel nursing after 1 year, just to get acquainted with different agencies, hospitals, and different contracts. And it was something that I really wanted to do and wanted to learn, because I had a passion to know what can I do for this not to happen again to the future of the nurses. So after many years, I was able to get 5 state licenses, Northeast region. I was able to sign 40 contracts with 30 different agencies, 20 plus hospitals that composes of top academic hospital, teaching hospital, nonprofit organization, community hospital, for-profit companies, small community healthcare systems. So I was able to combine different kinds of healthcare setting and gave myself a full-blown education on what are these agencies doing and how they deal with these facilities and how they build their contracts. I'm made aware of these grievances of the other nurses all over the country. And I said, what problem do you have when you were starting in here? I was able to interview a lot of them. And it was a very great experience, because not only that I was able to talk to the recruiters, I was able to talk as well to the different administration and staffing agencies, and I was able to talk to the nurses. And some I was able to talk to the hiring managers of the hospital to be able to come up with an idea, how can we make this better? I educated myself of problems arising in staffing agencies as well, and how we can address it. The next slide. If I have to redo my life, what will I do differently? There's a lot, and one thing that that really hit my mind is you should be advocate for yourself. Always advocate for your own knowledge. Prior to interview, you have to prepare. Okay, don't just go to a place and have interview and call it a day. No, before you go to an interview, always research the agency you're working or you're planning to work with. That's number one. Number two, before you go for an interview, research the employer you will be working with. There are a lot of resources out there. Google is right there in front of you. It will show you different information. The reviews are out there. Never ever sign a job or offer that you did not understand word per word, because those legal words are very kind of like overwhelming us when we read it, because we're non-legal and non-business profession. We're nurses. So there's a lot of jargons in there that you should be understanding first. And always ask if you need to, because these employers are there to answer your questions. The recruiters are there to answer your questions. If they do not know the answer right away, I'm pretty sure they can direct you to the right resources and who can answer that question. When you get here in the United States, if your contracts have been changed and that you are not sure if this is the right thing to do to sign another contract, always get a lawyer to do a contract review. I've asked a couple of lawyers around here from New York to Florida to Maryland, and I've asked how much do they charge. They said sometimes they charge about 150 to 200 for a contract review. So it's nothing compared to the tens of thousands of headache if you do something wrong and you just accidentally sign a new contract that you do not agree with. Okay. Use all the resources in your fingertips. Professional organizations are there. PNAs here, I'm very happy to be able to meet them. And the Philippine Embassy is there. We have Attorney Angela and Paulo. The Board of Nurses for each state are there as well to give you some information. Nonprofit organization as well is there. Use your resources at your fingertips. At right now, there is no excuse to say, I do not know, because all the resources are there in our internet, in our fingertips. And the last thing is always talk with your employers when issues arise. Oftentimes it can be solved. Don't just put it in your hands that, hey, you know what, I don't like this and I'm quitting like that. No, you do not do that. Always go over your contract. If you're not sure, get a lawyer and have a lawyer talk with you together with your employer, because most of the time it can be resolved again. And that will end my presentation. Thank you very much. And I hope you guys learned something from that.
Thank you so much, Kay, and I will hand it over to Jessica. Go ahead, Jessica.
Yes, hi, my name is Jessica, and I want to share with you my American dream. Next slide, please. So in 2006, I became a USRN, and then by the next year, I received my notice of action and was just awaiting for my next steps. Unfortunately, in 2008, retrogression happened and I was abandoned by my employer. 2000, next slide. 2014 was the year when the US opened to healthcare workers, and a friend of mine referred me to a staffing agency based in Florida. Next slide, please. I was offered a 3-year contract. No breach fee was in that contract. However, all my paperworks were in order and active, my visa screen, IELTS, everything. At that time, all I needed was just a petitioner. Next slide, please. So while waiting for my visa interview, I was in constant communication with my journey guide assigned to me. And I requested from my journey guide that I want to be assigned to Florida or Michigan, where I have siblings, so that they can also help me with my adjustment and childcare needs. My agency assured me that they have contracts all over US, and as long as I have license in those states, it won't be an issue. So I got a Florida and a Michigan license on top of my New Mexico license just to cover my bases. Next slide, please. In June 24, 2016, I arrived here in the US with my 2 kids, and I was pregnant with twins. We were housed in a 3-bedroom apartment in Fort Lauderdale. There were 9 nurses in the apartment and 3 people shared a room. We had a 3-week orientation at the agency's headquarters. We learned about taxation, health insurance, driving, ACLS, BLS, and PALS class. They made us repeat our ACLS, BLS, PALS class, even though we already have the AHA certification, and we were also charged for these classes. Part of the orientation was also coaching for job interviews, and they fixed our resumes. In this orientation, I learned that US employers don't really like employment gap of more than 30 days. And this is where I also learned how to use childcare as a reason for my employment gap in the Philippines. Next slide, please. I was also given, or we were also given, a $2,700 stipend, assistance in opening a bank account, even though we don't have a social security card yet. We were given 3 months free of rent, but after 3 months, we got to get hired or the agency will start collecting rent. Next slide, please. So my journey guide didn't want me to expose to my prospect employer that I am 6 months pregnant. And I refused because I felt it is unfair to the prospect employer to hire me and then send me on a maternity leave. I requested from my agency a maternity leave, which was granted. However, I have to buy my own health insurance. I left the apartment after our 3-week orientation and stayed with my sister in Florida. However, since I had to buy my own health insurance, I had difficulty finding a very affordable health insurance because I was considered a high-risk pregnancy. So I paid out of pocket for all my medical needs, and especially my medical checkups. When I gave birth, I found out I had insurance coverage the whole time from my agency. And just imagine how much money I could have saved by not paying out of pocket for all those medical checkups, because I didn't really get a dollar for dollar tax refund on the medical expense that I had. So I had to pay back the agency all the premiums that they paid for my health insurance once I've started working. My agency found me a job in New Mexico, but I didn't want to go there because I have no family in New Mexico. They told me that there's also no available jobs in Florida and in Michigan. Next slide, please. I moved to Michigan because I have 2 sisters who live there or here, and they rearranged their schedule so that they can help me care for my kids. My journey guide was furious because I did not ask permission. She refused to refund all my travel expenses. And then finally, they found a prospect employer for me, which was around 200 miles away from home, or about a 3-hour drive. Mind you, they told me also that this is the only available job for me in Michigan. And mind you, Michigan is a winter wonderland. And I'm an island girl. I haven't seen snow and about to start my first assignment with a 3-hour drive in the middle of winter. And I also worked in the roughest neighborhood. Every time I closed the facility, I always had to have an off-duty cop with me. But still, I accepted this assignment because I made a deal with the manager of the facility. I'm okay to go with it. I will do the sacrifices and everything that I have to go through, as long as she can give me a block scheduling to make my life a little bit easier. So next slide, please. This assignment taught me to be tough. It taught me to be firm without being rude. Disrespect is not tolerated. To deal with intimidating coworkers and how to handle getting mocked from my accent. I learned how to respond gracefully every time I get mocked, insulted, or discriminated. Next slide, please. So every week I have a conversation with my journey guide, and every phone conversation that I have with her, she would always be very condescending and would always remind me that I chose to come to the US with my kids. And if I am having problems with work-life balance, then it's my problem, not hers. She would constantly remind me that I should feel grateful I have a job and she is helping me. This gets on my nerves, but every week I would also request from her to be transferred to a nearby facility, to any facility near my home at the end of my assignment. When I was doing that 3-hour distance assignment, I was never late for work. I never called off work. But when I requested for a PTO because my son was sick, they refused that PTO. Near the end of my assignment, my agency hasn't found a nearby location or new assignment for me. And my facility at that time where I work wants to get me and wants to get me on as a permanent staff. And I told them that I am under contract and that they should talk to my agency. But I am requesting for a pay increase as I have to move my family or my whole family into that town. The agency refused the offer of the facility, and they countered offered with a long-term contract with no wage increase. I told my agency I am refusing this long-term contract. And what I did was that I cashed out all my PTOs, and with no possibility of nearby assignment, I sent in my 2 weeks notice. And then I decided at the end of my 6-month contract with that facility, I decided to fly home to the Philippines with my twins because I couldn't afford the childcare cost. Next slide, please. So at the end of my assignment, I did not receive my last paycheck. That's when my agency started threatening me. They informed me that they never received my hours from my manager, although I have evidence to prove that my manager at that time sent them or emailed them my hours. They sent me threatening emails. They told me that they will report me to USCIS and have my green card canceled because I arrived here in the US for fraudulent reasons. Next slide, please. $161,365.91. That's the amount I must pay my agency for breaching my contract, or they will take legal action. So I continued to receive threatening emails, voicemails, and even a demand letter. This went on for about 3 months. Next slide, please. I found RN friends from the same agency with the same issues. One of them recommended to me to reach out to PNAA, specifically with Ms. Marife Sevilla, who then referred me to Mr. DeVry, who was a labor attaché of the Philippine Consular Office in Washington, D.C. at that time, who then referred us to to a pro bono lawyer who can help us with, that time it was a prospect class action lawsuit against my agency. So our group communicated with these people until we decided to have a phone conversation with my agency. And then in that discussion, phone discussion, we found out that we are not travel nurses. Instead, we are contract nurses. Miss Marife can explain that further to you, but at that time, I really didn't understand what the difference or what it means, because it felt like we were travel nurses. Next slide, please. So $50,000. After that discussion, our breach fee was lowered. The pro bono lawyer backed out because he felt that he cannot represent us with a lower breach fee, and we were encouraged to settle. I informed my agency through my journey guide I cannot afford $50,000. I'm a single mom of 4 and $1 away from welfare. So I told them, go ahead, take legal action. Next slide, please. My agency came back to me and offered me to go back and work for them again. They will find a nearby assignment for me. They will give me a $10 per hour wage increase. And because I don't trust them, I told them, put it in writing. I've learned better. I've learned my lessons. And true enough, all those new promises were not in the new contract. And after that, I refused to communicate with them except through emails only. Next slide, please. What happened was all my friends settled. All of them settled for $15,000 to $25,000. One went to court, but eventually it was settled. I was the only one who didn't settle. $25,000 that my agency offered me to settle for $25,000, a $10,000 in cash, and $15,000 in a 24-month period. But I told them no. Next slide, please. $5,000. I asked the agency accountant if she can compute all the expense that they have spent for me from processing to the time I breached my contract. And they came back with a total of $5,000 expense. I told that accountant I will pay off this $5,000. Would they dismiss, just, drop everything? I did not receive a response from them. Next slide, please. And then I found out that I got sued. This happened a month after the discussion with the agency. A friend of mine told me about, hey, Jessica, check out Broward County Clerk of Court. I saw your name there. And I also started receiving, I live in Michigan. I started receiving letters from lawyers, like spam letters. But I waited for the summon, and the summon never came. And I found out later on that the judge dropped the case for being inactive for 3 months. Next slide, please. So when asked by colleagues in the Philippines about whether company A or company B is good, I always say, if you know of at least one person who breached their contract due to a working or assignment condition, why will you even sign up with them? Next slide, please. If I can repeat time again, I will have a second and third thought before even signing anything. I will let a lawyer read my contract. I will not be afraid to ask questions about missing conditions in my contract, no matter how desperate I am for a petitioner. I will demand for an actual amount be placed in my contract just in case I cannot finish my contract. I will also ask for specific assignment area because I have so many colleagues who came here and they were assigned in a completely different area when they got here, like their ER. Their specialty is ER, and then when they got here, they got assigned to labor and delivery. It's like, you know, and as for which state you're going to, because when I got here, we were just informed that just tell during the interview at the embassy, just tell them that you're going to Florida because that's the head office of the agency. And then they will just assign you to whichever state you can get a job. I will also look for companies that will credit my RN experience in the Philippines so that I will receive a fair and competitive pay. Believe me, there are companies that will credit your nurse experience in the Philippines because they believe in the education. This is what one of the CEOs told me in one of my orientation when I asked, why did you ask me when I got my Philippines nursing license? And he told me, because we think that the standard of nursing education and training in the Philippines is equal to that here in the US. And lastly, next slide, please. And lastly, always remember to make yourself a priority because at the end of the day, you are your longest commitment. To live and work here in the US is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. You can realize your dreams, but you always have to make sure that you have your work-life balance. I want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my experience and be an advocate to all my fellow nurses because I don't want any other nurses to experience what I went through. Thank you. And if I can give the floor or mic to Ms. Marifes.
Thank you so much, Jessica. And our next speaker will be Marife Sevilla. Go ahead, Marife.
Good evening, everybody. And I would like to share you some stories that PNAA have learned and gained knowledge from. The PNAA local chapters consist of 4,400 members in 26 states with 52 chapters. We assist and we provide acculturation. We gave education, post-arrival orientation seminar in collaboration with the Philippine Overseas Labor Office under Washington, D.C. We also do referral to legal resources. We have also documented how important and vital the PNAA chapters in supporting and spearheading cases like the landmark Sentosa case in New York, and also the concurrency issues in California. We collaborate with the Philippine Overseas Employment Agencies in the Philippines. We collaborate with the Alliance for Ethical Recruitment of Nurses, and of course, with the Philippine Overseas Labor Office in Washington, D.C. The human rights role is purely advocacy. We start with doing case intake as cases are presented to us. The committee validate the case, we do referrals, and we do follow-up. Next. I will share you now the 3 cases that we have documented with the human rights under Philippine Nurses Association of America. Our case number 1 is declining options from staffing agency. And you could probably, some of you could identify with this story. The situation was that Nurse M arrived the US with her 3-year-old daughter. She was assigned to work day shift as a replacement to a hospital nurse on a maternity leave for 6 months. However, the nurse on maternity leave came back after 3 months earlier. Nurse M was reassigned to work night shift. The problem for her own childcare came about. She was then offered by the agency an afternoon shift, but Nurse M declined assignment due to childcare. Eventually, the staffing agency offered her a daytime shift, but it was in North Dakota. She complained about the cold weather and the expense to buy winter clothing. She decided to breach her contract, and we have not heard from Nurse M following up with her. The number 2 case is a contract nurse versus travel nurse. You've just heard from Jessica about contract nurses not being a travel nurse. The situation was that Nurse J was deployed to work in a hospital after signing a 3-year contract with a staffing agency in the Philippines. He noted that the travel nurses were paid more than what he is getting. He believed that he is also a travel nurse since he is assigned to different hospitals and different locations. The staffing agency, upon reaching out to them, explained his contract and his status as a contract nurse. He decided to breach his contract. What is a contract nurse? A contract nurse is a person who is a nurse who signs a contract with a staffing agency that has contracts with different hospitals in different states. That is why when you arrive here, you get 5 licenses from different states in order for you to work in this different location. The nurse will then be assigned to work in different facilities and states. A travel nurse is a US-based experienced nurse who traveled to different facilities and states to fill a temporary work position in hospitals or facilities. They have a home base here in the United States. Our nurse, Kay Mendoza, can explain much better about this travel nursing as she has experienced working with so many agencies as a travel nurse. Situation number 3 is a breach of contract, buyout, and non-compete from what the nurses has to contend. The situation was that Nurse Jane was working in the hospital when she sustained a back injury after helping a patient. The doctor forbid her to do bedside care, but allowed her to do office work. Unfortunately, the hospital did not have a position for her. Nurse Jane applied to a nearby hospital as a case manager. Nurse Jane was not aware of the non-compete clause in her contract from the hospital, that she can only work 50 miles away from her original hospital. Her case was referred to Philippine Overseas Labor Office when she reached out to PNAA and was advised to get a legal counsel to address her disability compensation and resolve her non-compete contract from the hospital. Now, what is a breach of contract? It is when one party breaks the terms of agreement. What is a buyout? Involves purchasing an existing contract from the owner, and this non-compete clause is specific to the distance of employment, which is limited to the ability to work in other places. Now, may I give the floor to our lawyer, Attorney Megan Kellam.
Thank you so much, Marife. I'm going to stop sharing so Attorney Kellam can share her screen.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me this evening or this morning, depending on what time it is. So these stories are very important and they're very common. I have been working in this industry for a long time, dealing with many staffing and agency cases. And my goal tonight is to help give you information and advice so you never have to call someone like me. That is my goal for you all. Now, there are so many different types of contracts and relationships with recruiters and employers that it would be impossible for me to go over all of that today, especially because I don't have that much time. But what everyone will have similar experiences with, and what everyone will have to go through, is the immigration process. And just like you heard some of our speakers say, a lot of people will sign documents without reading them. They're so excited to start their journey and excited to get a petitioner, and they will put their name on things. And I cannot stress enough how important it is to read everything. If you don't understand what you're looking at or what the words mean, ask for help. And just like they said, if you invest in yourself now, it can save you thousands and thousands of dollars and emotional pain and frustration down the line. So I am going to share my screen. And what we're looking at here is a document called the ETA Form 9089. Now, this document is an example. I've filled it out. Everything in here is fake, but I wanted to take you through this to help you understand what is in this document and help you see how important knowing what this document says is. So the ETA 9089 is used for all employment-based immigrant visas. So if you're being petitioned to come over with and receive a green card, you will need this document. You will sign this document, and you would be shocked at how many of my clients told me they don't ever remember seeing it. They don't remember ever reading it, but they did in fact sign it. Now, if you are coming over on a temporary work visa, an H visa or similar visa, you will not have this exact document, but you'll have something similar. So me taking you through this will still be helpful. So before I go through it, I want to read something to you all. This is from the instructions on this application. An employer, alien, or agent who knowingly furnishes any false information in the preparation of the ETA 9089 and any supporting documentation is committing a federal offense punishable by fine or imprisonment up to 5 years or both. So let me pause and make sure everyone is not sleeping, make sure everyone is listening. Signing this document, if you knowingly put false information in this document, you could be subject to penalties of 5 years in prison. That should show you how important this piece of paper is and why you want to read it. Now, let's go through this document, because not only is it important because your name is on it, this also can save you so much trouble figuring out what your job is and what's going to happen when you come to the United States. A lot of my clients have said, I didn't even know who my employer was. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just signed. Okay, well, let me help. So the first thing when you get this document, you're going to want to look at this very important section. This is your employer information. And so many people have said, is my recruiter my employer? Who is my employer? If you don't know, you need to look at this document. It will answer that question for you. So in my example, we have Memorial Hospital is the employer. And I have this area starred, the NAICS code. This is something that you can Google. You can find out what this number means. All this is a classification for type of businesses in the United States. And so this classification, it's a real classification. This is for a hospital or a surgery center. So you're going to Google this number and make sure, hey, hospital surgery center, that matches up, Memorial Hospital. Okay. If you are actually going to be working for a staffing agency or a staffing company, this NAICS code will be different. You can Google the number and it will say staffing agency, and your employer will say a staffing agency. Please pay attention to who your employer is, because your job duty and your entire journey will be very different if you work for a staffing agency versus an employer, a hospital employer. Now, some of this isn't really important to go over today, especially with our limited time. So I'm just going to skip through it. Employer contact, that's just the person at the employer that is going to be in charge of this document. Agent or attorney, this is just the attorney who prepares it. This one was Taylor Swift. Wouldn't we be so lucky? This next portion, though, the prevailing wage, this is another really important part. Your prevailing wage is this number. And again, this is just a made up number, but this is the minimum number the minimum salary that your employer must pay you for the job position that you're being petitioned for. So in my example, a registered nurse in Tallahassee, Florida, has got to at least be paid $48,000 a year. This is important because if you get to the United States and you realize, why is my paycheck so low? What is going on? You need to pull this document out. You need to say, I'm supposed to be paid this prevailing wage. And if you're not, that's a red flag. You need to stop and ask for help. You need to reach out to someone. Now, the next section, job opportunity, where the work will be performed. This is another important aspect. You heard in the speaker say, I didn't even know where I was going to work. Well, this is your primary work site. This should be the address where you are stationed to work. And this job title, registered nurse, Section 8 job title is very important. This is the position you intend to accept in the United States. And that sounds logical. It makes sense. Okay, I'm going to be a registered nurse. This is important though, because if you get to the United States and someone is trying to force you into a different position, or, oh, we don't have a registered nurse position open, you need to work as a nurse's assistant. This is a red flag. This is a problem that could potentially cause a lot of issues with immigration or legal issues for you. So pay attention to what your job title is. Scrolling down these next sections, this is just about the job opportunity, the training and experience required. We're going to skip through that. We don't have time. And that's mostly for the employer to fill out anyway, but you should read it. Understand what the job training required is. Same, some of these parts of the application will be different depending on what visa you are coming over on. So we're going to skip these. They don't apply for a Schedule A nurse, which is the example I have in this document. But now we're going to get down to another important section, general information. All must complete this. Has the employer received payment of any kind for submission of this application? That seems like a simple question. But you need to stop and ask yourself, has the employer, who's the employer? Is it my recruiter? No, let me go back, check who it lists as my employer. Okay, did I pay this person any money for this? You need to make sure this is answered correctly. And I have a note down here, embassy red flag. And I want to pause here. If you are coached, if you are told what to say or what not to say at the embassy interview, you need to stop and ask yourself, am I being told to lie or am I being told to hide the truth? This is a red flag. Now, I'm not saying that all embassy preparation is bad or is a lie or is coercing you to say something that's not true. You'll know. If you read your documents and you understand what your journey is going to be, you will know if you're being coached to misrepresent. And you do not want to sit across from an embassy officer and give them misinformation. Remember, you are signing this document. It comes with consequences. So let's make sure that all of this information is understood and you're answering correctly. All right, now we're going to alien information. I hate the term alien. It's so outdated and terrible, but they still use it in our immigration laws. This is you. This is the foreign worker. This is going to be all of your personal information. Please take time to go through and make sure this is accurate. Make sure your address is correct. Make sure all of this information is true to you and your background, your education, and your work experience. Make sure all of this is entered correctly. If there are errors, notify the recruiter, notify the employer, whoever your contact is, and say, hey, we need to correct this. And I will tell you why. because I'm going to stress we're going to read, review, and sign this document only after reading it in full, because here's where you sign this alien declaration, where you're signing under penalty of perjury that the information in sections J and K are true and correct. That's your personal info and your work experience. And that you understand that knowingly submitting false information is a crime. You are also promising under penalty of perjury that you intend to accept the position in section H. In my example, if you scroll back up, section H, it says registered nurse. You're promising that that is the job you're going to take. This is very important for immigration. Next, the declaration of preparer. This is the attorney that prepares this. They are also forced and made to sign under penalty of perjury, acknowledging that it's a crime if they knowingly submit false information. And third is the employer declaration. And look at this. All of these things, number 1 through 10, all of these things are promises that your employer is making you. Read these. You will get so much information, even if the language is odd and you need to ask for clarification. If you get to the United States and you realize, wow, I feel like my salary is too low, your employer promised to pay you the prevailing wage. They put under penalty of perjury their signature that they were going to pay you that prevailing wage. This information is very important for you. So if you get here, you can understand if you're not being treated like you should be treated. Because this employer is saying that they will take full responsibility for the accuracy of what's in this document, and that they understand that to knowingly furnish false information is a federal offense. Keep a copy of this document. Because this has to be presented as part of your immigration package, you will need to sign it. If you don't have a copy, ask for a copy and understand the seriousness and importance of the immigration process. This application is just one piece of the puzzle. And the contracts, your recruiter information, job offer letters, all of this is the whole process. This is one important piece. And I want you to understand the function of this. So with this application, the employer listed in section C, they're asking our government, hey, government, we want to sponsor the applicant to come over and work as a registered nurse. They're promising that they're going to employ you as a registered nurse. And they are, if you're approved for a green card, they are given permission to employ you. They are the petitioner. And now this is important for a couple of reasons. I know I said I didn't have a lot of time to go over contract clauses. So instead, what I want to do is talk about contract red flags. The first question that I get asked a lot by my clients, Megan, who do I work for? Okay, well, we went through that just now. Look at section C of your ETA 9089. Your recruiter is not your employer unless they are listed on this document. Ideally, in a perfect world, your recruiter places you with an employer and their job is over. Now, it is a major red flag if your recruiter is acting like they are your employer in the United States. This can cause serious legal issues for you and for the recruiter. Remember, if the recruiter is not listed, then they did not get permission from the government to employ you, and you did not promise to work for them. So if they try to bring you here, if a recruiter tries to bring you to the United States through a petitioner, but then once you're here, they want to employ you, they want to control you, they want to be the ones that tell you where to work, when to work, how to work. This is a red flag and could possibly be a violation of our immigration laws by the recruiter. So please, if this situation arises, stop and ask for help, get advice. Unfortunately, when I asked a lot of my clients, how did you end up getting into trouble? Most of them said that all of their trouble resulted from choosing a really bad recruiter. And that's just the reality. Yes, there are good recruiters. Yes, there are bad. And my advice to you is do your research, just like the other speaker said. Find a reputable recruiter. Ask friends, ask colleagues. Look for POEA accreditation or licensing. It's a starting place. It may not ensure a perfect situation, but it's a good place to start. All right, next part is liquidated damages. This is a legal term. It's also sometimes called a buyout clause. This is something that you may see in a contract. This is an example of a liquidated damages clause. In the event the applicant breaches this contract, the applicant agrees to pay $40,000 to cover all damages incurred by the agency. So liquidated damages clauses are subject to many legal actions in the United States, and every state is different. Some states are very tough on these clauses, and they will not enforce them if the clause is really being used as a penalty and it's not a real example of the damage that the agency would have experienced. But you can't rely on that. You can't trust, oh, hopefully I'll be in a state that doesn't enforce liquidated. Don't make that mistake. If you see this in your contract, make sure you understand how it works and ask yourself, should I be signing this? Make sure that you are clear on what this liquidated damages clause is. Okay, and I know I'm talking fast, but I have a few more things to get through. Work term confusion. A 3-year term for your recruiter, but not your employer. This is a warning. So like I said before, you have to look at all of your contracts and the immigration documents as a whole. They're the pieces of your puzzle, and they should match and they should fit. So if your job offer letter and the ETA 9089, that document we just went through, if they sound a lot different than the contract with your recruiter, this is a warning. And I say warning because it doesn't always mean it's bad. It doesn't always mean that it's illegal or unenforceable. It just means you have to pay extra close attention and make sure you understand what you're signing. So remember, your recruiter is not going to be your employer. So if they're asking you to sign a contract that requires you to work for 3 years, but your employer is not asking you to sign a contract to work for 3 years, how does that match up? Your recruiter is not supposed to employ you. If your employer doesn't have a work term, how can they have a work term? These things don't match. And this is ripe grounds for legal problems. So if you're in the United States and you do not have a work term with your employer and you properly leave, but your recruiter says, no, you have to go back and work for 3 years or I'm going to sue you. This is a headache. This is a legal battle that could be very expensive, and it's a situation you don't want to find yourself in. Now, if you choose to sign a contract with a work term in it, understand what that work term really means. And you have to realize that if this is your commitment, make sure that it matches in your documents and make sure you understand your commitment. All right, bait and switch. This is what I see the most of with my clients, and it's similar to this work term confusion. This can apply to work term, job duty, job position. You go through all of the process in the Philippines, you come over to the United States, you think, great, I'm going to start work. And they say, well, welcome to the United States. Now sign this new contract. Or welcome to the United States. Now sign this or there's going to be no placement. Or there's no open position. We want you to take a different job. These are red flags. You must get advice before signing a new contract, especially if it's shortly after your arrival in the United States. This could impact your green card. Taking a different position could impact your immigration. And an employer trying to force you into a different situation could be their their actions could be violations of the law. So this is ripe grounds for problems. So I realized that this is a stressful time, just like Kay's story. She's in the US, in Manhattan, she's got, $200. She doesn't. I understand that what I'm telling you could be an added stress, but I guarantee you that if you stop and you ask for help, it will save you headaches down the line. Because you do not want to sign a new contract that says, now you have to work as a nurse's assistant, when in that ETA 9089, you promised to accept a job as a registered nurse. Or you are going to now work for, somebody else or have a different prevailing wage. You need to make sure that it is in line with your immigration application. And if any employer asks you to sign something and they don't accept your response of, I need to stop and have a lawyer review this, that is also a problem. A reputable employer would understand that you need to consult an immigration attorney about this new contract. Okay, and the question I am asked all the time, how long must I work for a green card petitioner? There is no specific minimum period of time you must work for the green card petitioner. Okay, I know that people hear all of the time threats, comments. I, as an immigration lawyer, am telling you there is nothing in our laws that say you have a specific period you have to work for them. But there must be evidence that you and the employer intended on working together indefinitely in that sponsored position at the time the green card was approved. So what does that mean? That's kind of confusing language. Well, if you make all of these promises in the Philippines and you fly to the United States and you get placed at a hospital and you intend to work as a registered nurse, and now they're saying, well, sorry, we don't have that position. You have to work as a receptionist. Sign this agreement. No, that is absolutely inappropriate. And that is not going to be used to invalidate your green card or start deportation. But it's very important that you talk to an immigration attorney at this point, because they can help you compile evidence and make sure you're protecting yourself. So if you have a bully employer or a bully recruiter that says, we're going to call immigration, we're going to call USCIS, you have documentation and evidence to prove that your intent was proper and that what you are doing is not a violation. And that is essential. There are ways that if you are being mistreated or improperly treated, that you can terminate your contract without having immigration consequences and without having consequences for breach of contract. But you need advice on how to do that. So please make sure you use your resources. Now, on the flip side of that, I have to say that if your intention when you're in the Philippines is, oh, I'm just going to take whatever job with whatever petitioner, and as soon as I get to the US, I'm going to leave and go work for someone better, that is a violation of immigration laws. That would be grounds for consequence. So remember, what is your intent when that green card was issued? Did you really intend to work for that employer? And finally, don't let threats and red flags scare you. Let them empower you. If you hear threats of we're going to call immigration or we're going to have you deported, let this empower you and let it be something that motivates you. It is time to ask for help. It is time to get advice. Take pride and have confidence in advocating for yourself and ask questions. I know that nurses are critical thinkers and you have to use the critical thinking for yourself. If something feels wrong, trust your instincts, reach out for help, because these actions can save you from the emotional and financial damage down the line. And hopefully you never have to call someone like me. But if you do, reach out. And that's my presentation.
Thank you so much to all our speakers. It's a very empowering story from both our nurses. There are a lot of lessons learned as well from the previous cases that our Human Rights Committee have channeled to different resources to assist our nurses. And we are extremely lucky to have the expertise of Attorney Kellam to advise our nurses on what they need to look out for as part of the process of immigration, especially for those that are just planning to come here. So I will now turn it over to our moderators for the Q&A, Ms. Madeline Yu and Ms. Emily Danuco.
Good morning from Iloilo, Philippines. My name is Madeline Yu. I'm the chair of the Global Affairs Committee of the Philippine Nurses Association of America. And my co-chair, Em?
Hi, I'm Emily Danuco. Good evening and good morning to some of you in the Philippines. I am the co-chair of the Global Affairs Committee.
So you were all instructed to put your questions in the Q&A portion. And I believe we have a few that are already posted here. And do you mind reading the first one from Louis Pascual, only because my screen does not allow me to go up, so I apologize.
So that question was actually answered by Virginia Alansao. So do we still go over that question? Yes?
Yes,
okay.
please, just for everyone's information.
Okay. Has anyone heard of international travel nurse from the Philippines working in the US? Met one who was recruited from Cebu. Agency assigned her to work with private hospital in Western Carolina as a traveler. Their salary is paid by the agency with an hourly rate of $23 an hour. No differential working evening or nights. They have a contract of 50,000 hours of work. Her travel to United States as paid by the agency. What advice can we give her? They were also told not to get pregnant. So Virginia, since you have written the answer, will you be able to share that now and live? Or do you want me to read the answer too?
No.
You can probably read the answer, Emily, for purposes of time.
Okay. So this is the answer from Virginia Alansao. The use of the word travel nurse for a nurse coming from the Philippines is confusing or deceptive. Plus, the hourly rate of $23 an hour is not a U.S. traveler RN rate. Travel nurse in the United States rate ranged from $100 to $250 per hour based on state and specialty. This rate applies to U.S. experienced nurses with the skills and competencies in the area. You get minimum orientation. You're expected to hit the place running. You are a contract nurse, not a traveler. Staffing agency is your employer at $23 per hour. Get someone to review the contract, and there are options now. Research your options.
Thank you, Em. So to proceed to the second question, this one is asked by Rochelle Rico Rocco. Is it okay, and I believe this is directed to Attorney Kellam, is it okay if the lawyers of the agency showed page 5 to 8 only of our ETA 9089 document? They said it is because of the employer's privacy. Attorney Kellam?
I would say that that is a big red flag. If you're being asked to sign a contract that is that serious, I think that an agency should be willing to let you see the whole thing. And there are agencies out there that do give complete immigration packages to the foreign workers. So in my opinion, that is a red flag and that is inappropriate.
Thank you, Attorney Kellam. Emily?
The next question was asking if this webinar will be shared. It is recorded and it will be shared when the recording is available. It is in our Facebook, PNA Facebook.
Thank you. Now, if Marco Gachitorena would rephrase her question, I would appreciate it. How would you know you are HDR ETA? So please clarify your question. I'll go to the next one. Maria Sharma asks, how about direct hire? I'm confused. Can you please explain direct hire? Anyone?
I'll take that question. Can I
Yes, please. Yes, Virginia.
I think the simplest way for me to answer if you are a direct hire is if the documents that you're signing, your ETA, the one that Attorney Callum said, is where your employer is listed as the employer of, you know, whatever page that was. And also all the documents that you are signing, the job offer has the employer letterhead, and then the employer lists all the benefits that is afforded to all the employee that it would be a regular employee of that institution. Keep in mind though, that if you are, if an employer recruits from the Philippines, even as a direct hire, they have to partner by POEA standards, they have to partner with a Philippine licensed agency as the provider of the services. So many a times, in 100% of the cases, POEA will require that a US employer, even if they're doing the direct hire, will have a Philippine-based agency to be the intermediary, for a better term, so that they are the ones who does the marketing, coordination of services, you know, follow up with the employer, with the applicant to make sure that they meet all the documents requirements. But the key point is all your documents that you sign will have the employer letterhead. So the job offer, your ETA, all the documents that you sign, and you make sure you have a copy of those, are under that employer's list. If you know that you can still be a direct hire by the staffing agency, but the staffing agency would be the one listed as the employer. Would still be in that category. So, for example, Hospital X is recruiting 100 nurses. So they would hire agency Y in the Philippines to help them market or recruit nurses, and then all the interactions, the interviews are done by the employer, and then the agency then assists in making sure that all of the requirements are met by following up with the applicants. So I don't know if I made that myself clear, but it's the look at the documents that you sign. It has to have the employer's letterhead in all the job offers and all of the immigration requirements.
Thank you, Virginia. M?
The next question, I think this is also for Attorney Kellum. What if I signed an offer letter, but I haven't submitted any documents yet for I-40? Is it already breach of contract if I don't push through with them? Thank you. This is a question from Maria Christine.
That it would depend, in my opinion, and I will probably say this more than everyone wants to hear, but I would need to read the documents that you sign, because the terms of those documents will guide what is legal and what is not legal. Usually job offer letters, if it's a basic offer letter, are not necessarily binding contracts, but without looking at it, I cannot comment. And I also have to point out that I am licensed to practice in the state of Florida, and every state has different laws. So I am giving advice based on Florida law, you know, when it comes to contract terms. So I do have to keep, you have to keep that in mind.
Thank you, Attorney Kellum. Would anonymous viewer please state your name? We would appreciate if we know who we're talking to. Would you please type your name?
Yeah, that person has a lot of questions.
Yes. Do you want to post your name in the chat? Because you have very legitimate question, but we really would like to appreciate if we know who we're talking to. Okay, is there any other question, M?
I think he posted, I don't know if that was the person who put the chat in the Q&A in the chat. Someone put that name in there, so I don't know if that was the person that was asking those questions, but
yeah, it says Phoebe Pena is her name, the anonymous attorney.
Okay. We appreciate that, Phoebe. All right, so let me go and read your first question. Direct hire asking 40,000 US dollars for buyout is fair. What are the bases and how much will be the amount of buyout?
It's for me.
Anyone?
I can answer in my opinion, $40,000 is excessive. Now, I would need to understand the terms of your agreement and what you signed, but just based on the information in your question, that is an excessive amount of money.
Okay, Anne?
The next question, also I think from the same person, is it all right if my agency only asks me to sign section L of form 9089? I think Attorney Kellum already answered this previously. And the authorization to sign ETA 9089 on my behalf.
Again, you can choose to do whatever you want. You have the choice. In my opinion, I would advise that you read and sign yourself. You do not give authorization for anyone to sign on your behalf, that you take responsibility and empower yourself with those documents.
And I think the following questions are all for you, Attorney Kellum. I'm not an attorney, but I believe whatever you sign as your wage in the form ETA 9089 should match what's in the contract, because she's asking if it's different. Which one should you follow?
It should, the ETA 9089 should be the minimum. Your job offer may have a higher amount, but what our immigration regulations say is that the employer is required to at least pay the prevailing wage. So you may have a higher amount, and if you have a higher amount, then that's great.
Okay, thank you. Em?
Thank you. I think this is a follow-up question again about the already signed contract. So what steps should I do if I already signed, again, this is for Attorney Kellum, already signed a contract? I'm the one who paid my NCLEX and English exam, but they paid my I-40 and visa screen, and it's approved already. Is there any way to back out? I'm still here in the Philippines and haven't paid my NVCP bill yet. I'm not sure what that is.
That again, it would depend on what you've signed and what it says. Now, I hope that when you say, is there a way to back out? I hope that's not because what I said scares you, or because you're thinking, wow, I didn't do all of these things I already signed. I hope that my intention was not to scare anyone today. It was just to make sure people realize how important these documents are. But, in terms of backing out, it's complicated. I would need to see your documents of what you signed.
Thank you, Attorney. And again, I presume the anonymous viewer is the same person that follows up these different questions. I believe this could be answered by somebody who's familiar with skilled nursing facilities. Hi, how can we know the legal or safe nurse-patient ratio in SNFs? I believe it's skilled nursing facilities. The ratio is not indicated in the contract. Who do we reach first if we are direct hired through an attorney? Thank you. Anyone? Would you be familiar with this, Virgie?
I'm not familiar with the SNF, but I rarely see a contract where they will spell out the nurse-patient ratio. We don't even do that in an acute hospital. We can say, our nurse-patient ratio in med-surg is 1:5 to 1:6, but we never put that in writing. Although the practice in the nursing homes, I have seen, and a lot of the Lifora comments in and most of the forum is that it is 1:20 to 1:40 nurse-patient ratio. And I have friends who work in nursing homes, and they said, yep, that's the norm, 1:40 nurse-patient ratio with maybe 1 or 2 GNAs. So
right, and they do have nursing assistants to back them up, something like that.
Right.
Madeline, Kay has raised her hand.
Yes, Kay. Would you like to chime in, Kay?
Yes, so in addition to that, I'd like to let you know that the nurse-patient ratio often is actually it's a state rule. for example, is New York. There's a specific law in New York saying that for a skilled nursing facility, a facility should be giving at least 2.5 hours of patient care within the 24 hours. So when you distribute that according to three shifts, it looks like the nurse should have around 20 to 25 nurses.
Patients.
So, I mean, sorry, yes, sorry. For 20 to 25 patients, if you're gonna say that the resident needs about 2.5 hours of care, hands-on direct care within the 24 hours. And I've also seen that in Ohio. I've noticed that California has their own. So it's the best thing to go to your state website and you just type in their Google, state of Ohio, skilled nursing facility, nurse-patient ratio. And it should give you a lot of resources about it.
Thank you very much, Kay. M?
Next question, is there a chance that my termination or buyout fee reduced? In our contract, it is stated that we need to pay up to $40,000. Probably Kay or Jessica, or because they have experienced this, or Attorney Callum.
I can
What's
tell
the, yeah.
if you're in the United States already and you are in a contract and you want to get out of the contract or change your contract, you are free to negotiate terms. You can always ask. It doesn't mean that the other party is obligated to agree to what you're asking for. But a more interesting question I would have is, why do you feel the need to buy out your agreement? So is it you just want to leave? Because if that's the case, then you should have an attorney review your agreements, because you may be able to leave without a buyout at all. If an employer has breached a contract first, you may have the ability to be discharged from that contract, but you need an attorney to guide you. That's why it's very important.
Thank you, Attorney Kellum. Do you have a follow-up question, M, that you would like to answer?
No.
Okay.
We still
So,
have time.
I'm sorry?
We still have time. It's 7:30, so I don't know.
Are we okay to finish the list of questions, moderator?
I think for purposes of time, because in the past, what we did is for any unanswered questions, we will take note of it and we will give it back to our subject matter experts. And what we have done is email it to the registered participants. So this way, we will have time to address the questions that were not answered during this webinar series.
Okay, so that ends our Q&A portion of this webinar, and we thank you all for listening. We will create a fact sheet as what we did in the webinar, and I'll give the floor to Ate Lolet, please.
Yeah, I just want to mention that there are great comments on the chat. Perhaps maybe you should mention some of those so our speakers will also, hopefully they have the chance to read it. But they're very commendable comments that are very informative, very compelling stories, and a lot of people learn and also have that same experiences. So we hope that to our listeners that you will gain a lot from this presentation, shared it with your colleagues, all over the world. We have other people from different parts of the world. Hopefully that this advocacy work that the PNA America Human Rights Committee in Global Affairs will reach out and touch a lot of people. We want to empower each and every one of our colleagues. And thank you for all your attendance, for your engagement. Maligayang Pasko at masaganang bagong taon.
Thank you so much for your attendance. Please note that we will have a series number 3 on January 11, 2023, resources for newly arrived nurses. And we will have the last series that will be scheduled sometime in February and March of 2023. Again, thank you for everyone's participation, and we appreciate the presence of our dear President, Dr. Gloria Beriones, together with our Executive Director, Dr. Leo Felix Jurado, for attending this webinar series number 2. Thank you so much.